Hey everyone, just thought I would pop in for a quick scope. I think I'll only be in here for about 15 minutes. Sorry, did I say scope? I mean live. Wow. Just thought I would pop in. It's Tip, Tool, and Technique Day. And in the group today, I shared a little bit, it's a tip and a technique about getting a little bit more personal and being a little bit more human when you think about pitching the media. And I think it goes for every stage of that media PR presence. You know, we think so much about, strategies and techniques and, processes and systems that we put in place as far as our businesses. And, those are really important. But I think when we are thinking about pitching the media and really wanting to leverage the power of the media, we can lose that human element and forget about how important it is to be a person and to treat the person on the other end as a real person. Sorry, I'm trying to move the camera so that I'm outside and I've got this funny shadow from my glasses. So, what I want you to think about when you are making those connections with journalists, producers, reporters, editors, really think about them as a person. So, what do they want? What do they need? What do they need help with when it comes to the business that they're in, which is media? So, make those connections. I really recommend. Twitter is a great place. I know there's been lots of talk about how Twitter isn't what it used to be, but I do really believe that it's certainly about what you put into it. But the key is about Twitter is there's a lot of journalists who do their research on Twitter and they use it because it's effective. It's a really easy way to research, to find people to talk to. You can follow hashtags and what's trending, and it can be a really useful tool for a journalist and media partner. So it's a great place for you to be as an entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur, small business owner, to really go in there and make connections and build relationships. Really, it's about being personal, right? So be you, and remember that when you're following specifically a journalist, not just the show or the station or the media outlet, but remember, there's somebody that's actually tweeting for them, right? It's a real person. And especially when you make the connection with that specific journalist. So if it's their work handle and it's, Jane CTV producer, remember that that's, really them. They're going to be tweeting. In most cases, if not all, I would say they're tweeting themselves. They don't have an assistant that's doing it for them unless, maybe we're talking Oprah, possibly. I'm just going to move here. My connection, it was showing it was weak. So hopefully it's going to improve a little bit. But you want to remember that they're people. So, make your connection about building the relationship and, really work at that. And when you're pitching them, I think my signal's gotten a bit better. When you're pitching them, you're not pitching a robot. There is a person on the other end that's going to open the email and is going to read it. So, don't send an email saying, "Dear editor." Use their name. Do the work. They're going to know that you haven't invested the time to understand who they are if you're sending a pitch saying, "Dear producer." Not the best approach. It's not going to be a compelling pitch because right from the get-go, you're going to, that person's not going to be impressed. And just remember too, because you're reaching out to a real person, sometimes they have a bad day. Sometimes it's a difficult day in the newsroom or a difficult day on the show. And just remember that. We all have bad days and, allow for that. And, the follow-up is really key here too. So remember that they're a busy person and they're just doing their job. And maybe the email, the first time you reached out to them, it got past them or they forgot. We all forget sometimes. So it just, a friendly reminder, be professional, be friendly, be you. And, that's what's really going to set the tone. Because we often talk about this, well, how do I stand apart? And, there's so many people pitching and it's really noisy out there, which is true, it is. But I think if you remember that human element about the relationship, you're building relationships, you're building connections. If you remember the human element part of that, that's going to be compelling, right? You're going to, meet them where they're at. So just remember that. Build the relationships. It's about that personal connection. And, I think that sometimes when we, send emails out, we forget that idea of that personal connection is lost a little bit because we do so much online. We're all sitting, behind our laptops or our computers, and there's a lot less personal connection that happens in our own worlds every day. So if you can really use that human element, that personal connection when you're pitching and building on those relationships with journalists, in order to get you some really solid press and media attention, I think that's going to really give you that leg up. You know, build on that. One thing we talk about is, pitching via email. Most journalists prefer that. You make the connections on Twitter, other social media platforms. Twitter is still, I think, the one that's big for most journalists. But many of them prefer the email pitch. That's not to say that a phone call isn't effective. There's lots of journalists who rarely, if never, never get phone calls. Should you automatically pick up the phone and start dialing every journalist on your list? No. But what would be great is a personal introductory email. Make the connection because you have followed them on Twitter and maybe you've had some conversations on social with them. And, say, hey, I'd love to talk a little bit more about this. When is a good time to call? And really think about that, right? You want them to say, hey, you know what? 7 o'clock at nighttime maybe is a great time to call because they're not a 9 to 5 person. And the phone call can really be an effective tool if you use it properly. You don't want to be annoying. You don't want to be a bother to them. Newsrooms, media outlets can be a really busy place. So you want to make sure that you're doing it at the right time and asking, right? So ask when the best time is to talk is a great way to do that. But a phone call can certainly be a game changer as far as building that connection because you, again, want to be building relationships. Something I had talked about recently with somebody, I think in our Facebook group, which here you should all be watching in the Facebook group, was this idea of seeing media use the same people over and over again. So one particular show uses the same person, or it seems like they, are using friends maybe. And maybe that happens, but what I will say is that oftentimes, in my experience, because I worked in news for 20 years, you tend to use the same people over again because you built a relationship. You know that you can trust them, that they understand what you want and understand what you need to give the audience. And you know that they have done great work before and maybe they're easy to get a hold of and they pitch great stories. And, maybe it's just a really great connection. You've built a good relationship. So you use them over and over again. And again, because they've built a relationship. Relationship is key. Not to say that, journalists are not going to go with maybe a cold pitch. They will if the story is good. If you've been listening on social and listening to the show, reading, the magazine or the newspaper, listening to the podcast, but also listening on social. You're aware of the content that they're sharing and the conversations that they're having with people online so that you know that your pitch is targeted. But I really, really think that using those personal connections is key. So build those relationships. Talk to journalists like they're people. Think about how you want, people to pitch you if you're, a blogger or customers are coming to you and you're working on a business relationship. You want them to treat you with professionalism, but you want to be treated like a person. You're not a robot. You're not, you live, you have, struggles. We have good days, we have bad days. There are ups and downs, so keep that in mind when you're building relationships with journalists. And keep in mind that it isn't always about you. It should never be about you when you're pitching them, right? We, as journalists, they understand that you're getting something out of, being featured. Maybe your business is being featured, or you're doing a segment, or you're, commenting on a story that's already in the news. What you get out of it is you get to have your beautiful face on television, or your awesome voice on the radio, or, you get quoted in a magazine or a newspaper article. And so you're getting exposure, and people will learn about you, and you're building your street cred, and, you're building that know, like, and trust factor. But ultimately, this is about the audience. So, make sure that you're going into it not about, hey, what are you going to give me, or what am I getting out of this? Make sure that it's always about being in service to the audience. So what are you giving the audience? Are you informing them? Are you entertaining them? Is it about being engaging? Are you making their life easier, happier? Think about it from the audience perspective. How are you being of service to the journalists to help them be, better, give great content to that audience? So again, really work on those personal connections. It's all about human beings, right? That human element. If you keep that in mind at every stage of your, media and PR strategy, I think that you will find that you will have success. That you will get what you want out of that. You'll get media attention. You'll get the PR and create some buzz for who you are, what you do, and be able to reach a wider audience of customers and clients. So I'm about 12 minutes. If nobody has questions, I will sign off a little early. So again, tip, tool, and technique day. Make sure you toss some questions my way in the group if you need some help with anything, and don't be afraid to ask. And always check out my website. I put a lot of content on there at christyaLaverty.com. And again, thanks for those of you watching live. I really appreciate it. And if you're watching the replay, awesome. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in the group and chatting, and again, making personal connections, building relationships. It's all about that personal connection. So ciao for now. Thanks for watching. Cheers.